Welcome into another episode of the Young Dad Podcast. I'm your host, Jay. I'm super excited to be here with you today. It's a beautiful Monday morning in March. I'm not sure when this is going to come out, but it's March right now as we're recording this. So happy spring. We're T-minus 6 days out from daylight savings time starting, so that's exciting. Best time of the year, springtime. It's currently cloudy and 36 degrees outside where I am. So I can't wait for this weather to be done and for the sun to be out at 6 a.m. versus darkness. So very excited. Today I'm joined by Chelsea. Chelsea, you're the host of the Quiet Connection podcast, which is a postpartum mental health podcast helping parents and caregivers share their stories to end the stigma around that postpartum mental health and how sharing stories about how we're not trying to scare each other when we tell these stories about birth stories, birth experience, postpartum, where we're trying to help each other be prepared and not scared. Because there's a big difference in both of those. Because if you don't know what to expect, then you're going to be scared. But if you know what to expect, you're not going to be as scared. You're going to be more prepared. So welcome to the podcast. Super excited to have you. Super excited to talk about this topic with you. I know it's kind of different, probably, from your sphere, but it's a great opportunity for collaboration and conversation. So please tell us about you. Tell us about your podcast. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to be here. I'm Chelsea. I host Quiet Connection, which stemmed from my own postpartum mental health journey. And yeah, it's just I'm creating a community where there wasn't one. Or where there wasn't one that I was able to find. I'm finding a lot of them now, which is really good. I am a non-binary mother of two. I have an 8-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. I'm doing the stay-at-home mom thing right now, which is very different for me. I worked in special ed for 10 years, and that was like 100% my passion. And advocating for children and families was my deal. And now I'm really I was always a mental health advocate, but now that's like my scope. That's where I'm focusing a lot of my energy. But yeah, I'm in Vermont. I'm in the Northeast, so we are on opposite sides of the country. But ironically, our weather is about the same this morning. It's about 39 and bright sunshine here. So hopefully you get the sunshine soon. But yeah, I mean that's me in a nutshell. I'm an open book. I'm as transparent as it gets, and you can ask me anything and I will answer.
I love it. I love that. So we have so many directions we can go to start this. So let's start with about you. Take us through like your special education career, because that in itself is a amazing topic. I started out when I first started going to college way back when. Actually started out as a special education K through 12 major. And
oh wow,
I got scared out of it by a professor. I was in my sophomore year. I was about a year and a half from student teaching, so I was well into my program at that point. So I was like looking at student teaching, planning student teaching. I had finished all my 100s and my 200s. I was starting on my 300 level courses. So I was well into my program at this point. And I had a professor. He scared me out of it. He's like, well, if you're not going to be committed to it 100%, of course, I'm like 19, 20 years old. Of course, I have commitment issues. Of course, it was probably the wrong thing to say. But, it scared me out of it, and I switched to business and didn't go back to it. And then that led me down a path of working and things like that. Got married to my first wife and all the things from there. And then I went back to school, got back into the field somewhat. I ended up getting my bachelor's in human services with emphasis in child and family welfare. So a lot of my credits ended up transferring. That was kind of the big thing for me when I went back to school, was how many of my credits will count? So I have less classes to take. So you tell me the major I'm going to have when I'm going to get my degree in. And they're like, oh, well, I'm like, cool, that works. And now I have my master's degree in psychology. So a lot of fun. I mean, it all happened for a reason. It all worked out. But take us through like your special education journey and kind of some of the things that how you're transitioning from being in this bed for 10 years now to being a stay-at-home mom to doing more mental health stuff.
Yeah. Ironically, our stories aren't that different. I took a pretty non-traditional route. Started out very traditional. I was an elementary education major. And I did all of my courses up until student teaching. Like, I was right about to student teach, and I was doing my in-school experience where you just sort of like dip your toe in the water before student teaching. And I hated it. I could not stand it. Looking back now, I realize it was the district that I was in. But I was like, this is not for, I'd spent my whole life saying, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a teacher. And I had this experience and I was like, never, no, you're not, it's not going to happen. And I switched my major my senior year, which is ridiculous.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I switched my major my senior year. So I took the 5-year college route,
Love it.
graduated with a major in liberal arts with a focus in psychology, business, and fine and performing arts, which is like the most, like the weirdest combination
That
of
is a
stuff.
combo for sure.
Yeah. But my goal was I wanted to open my own preschool because I still really loved working with kids, and I'd always worked with kids. So, and that, I mean, I did that for a while. I didn't own my own preschool, but I worked in preschool, leading my own classrooms as a lead classroom teacher, and loved it. Had some of my first experiences working with kids on the autism spectrum and kids with pretty significant physical and intellectual disabilities through childcare, and learned that I loved it. And happened to, by chance, see a job opening in a town that I grew up in for an intensive needs special educator. That's where I started. I applied not thinking I was going to get the job. I'm like, I'm not qualified for this at all. But I got it and I loved it. And yeah, I worked with kids with low incidence disabilities primarily. So kids on the autism spectrum, kids with Fragile X, kids with Down syndrome, kids with like just kind of the most high needs kids. And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is just what I want to do forever. So I went back to school and I did a licensure program rather than a degree program. But once you completed the licensure program, you only had like half a semester or not half a semester, like one semester left to finish your degree. So I was like, cool, I'll get my license and then I'll get my degree. Got my license, got hired as an intensive needs special educator, did that for a little while, did gen ed special ed, hated gen ed special ed. Learned that my niche was definitely with low incidence disabilities kiddos. Life changed for me very, very quickly. Over the course of, 3 years lead up to now, everything changed for me and work became like my last priority. My husband was in a absolutely catastrophic motorcycle accident. He shouldn't be alive, but he is. He shouldn't be walking. Took us a long time, but he is. So that took me away from work for a long time. It really affected me and my oldest. And it just changed all my priorities. I wasn't happy in work to begin with anymore. Like my administration was just not supportive. Anybody who works in the school system right now knows how damaged and broken it is, and it's not our fault, but you're getting abused every day. The kids are just,
it's pretty terrible.
It's terrible.
It's pretty
and
bad.
it's not the teacher's faults.
It's not.
It's absolutely not.
No, it's not. And I talked to my friend of the show. He was on the podcast. His name's Tim Viegas. He has the Think Inclusive podcast. very much up both through Alice. I should definitely connect you guys. I think you guys would have a great conversation
Yeah.
overall. He's fantastic, but he's been in special education for a very long time. And we talked about it pretty in depth. And where I believe the issue starts is at the highest levels. Obviously, it's at the top level. It's at the school board level,
Yeah.
which are elected positions,
Mm-hmm.
which are filled with people who have probably never stepped in a classroom, stepped into people who don't understand it, stepped into a position that they want to then springboard into further political gain, springboard into further political thing, or they already have a political agenda and they're already just trying to push that so that they can get paid on the back end kind of thing from their sponsors to get them that position and things like that. So it's really sad and very disheartening. You can call me a conspiracy theorist. You can call me whatever you want. You can call me whatever, right wing, whatever you want. That's fine. Go ahead. But that's where the issue is. It's within the school boards, and it starts at the top, and then that trickles down into the administration. Because who does the school board hire? The administration of the schools.
Yep.
And then if they put the right people in there, then they start to change the schools the way they want to. And then that just hurts the teachers. Because where's the turnover the most impactful? At the administrative level. That's going to be the most impactful turnover because that's going to impact the teachers that are coming in or most importantly, going out. I mean, you see teachers all over TikTok, Rebecca Rogers, Lauren Lauder, just to name drop a couple. I would love to talk to both of them on the podcast. I think they would be great conversation. So if this ever reaches them, that'd be super cool. But yeah, no, it's at that really high level of the school board and the administration, which is causing this turnover. And it's not the teacher's fault whatsoever. Like even my fiance, she works for the local Head Start program. And her manager, she's been there for 5+ years. She's had incredible reviews. She's had incredible, staffs and, peer-to-peer reviews of her. But her manager just gave her a review, and it was the worst review of her professional career. Just took their union too, so she took everything out on her. On top of that, some absenteeism, which wasn't, on purpose. There was different. There were different reasons that were, she does her part. She calls the union. That's all she has to do. But everything was negatively reviewed on her on that review. It was so negative. It was so hurtful to the point where it's like she wanted to put her 2 weeks in over the weekend. Because it was it was that bad. It was that untrue. And it's so sad and so disheartening. Because I mean, even one of our local school districts here, I work in mental health. So I'm a mental health professional. We work with schools and whatnot here in our community. We found out that one of our school districts next year, because of the deficit they are in, are going to be cutting mental health, the in-school mental health professionals, which is super disheartening.
And that's where you need to be investing more.
Exactly, 100%. But no, they're cutting it. But yet we have a big project going on one of the bridges here, that they're repainting this bridge, and they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on repainting this stupid bridge. And I'm convinced that it's just a money laundering scheme overall. Again, call me a conspiracy theorist. I bet it'll come out in 10 years that it was all just for money laundering and, all the things like that. But it's like, how are we going to cut the mental health professionals in the city where we're painting a fucking bridge? Like, it's a bridge.
Yeah.
Who cares if it's as blue as it could be? No, fix the structural damage. Nobody else cares. Literally nobody cares at that point. So it's just, it's frustrating, it's disheartening, and you're right. It's not the teachers. It's the politics at play. It's the politics at play, and it goes so much deeper and beyond that. Then you start looking at the school board level, then you start looking at the state level, because who do those school boards report to? They report to the state. Who does the state report to? They report to the country, and so on and so forth. And so that's why it's so important. It's so important when you get your ballot for those local elections. Know who you're electing to your school board positions. Read about them in the little pamphlet they send you. If you feel inclined, like that's one thing that my church does really well. I'm religious, Christian. My church does a really good job in that they are a nonprofit, but they're not a 501(c)(3). They're a different kind of nonprofit, so they can endorse political candidates without any backlash. Because the 501(c)(3) can't endorse political candidates, a typical nonprofit. But it's like a 508B or something. I don't remember what it is, but they're allowed to
all those
endorse
letters and
political.
numbers.
Yeah, they're allowed to endorse political candidates. So they do a really good job of literally bringing people who are from within the congregation, who we're connected to, who like people know, who are like affiliated with the church in some way, shape, or form, and they bring them to the service, and they get to speak, and we get to hear them talk a little bit about their plans and what they want. And so like, okay, I know this person has high values, high moral compass, and I sat next to this person in church. I rubbed shoulders with them. I taught their kids. So I know this person at a personal level, which makes it so much more impactful to vote for them, to do that. But that's why your local elections are so important, to make sure that you vote. You have to vote. You have to vote, people.
You have to vote.
You have to vote. Local elections, primary ballot, all the things. Vote. It's a voting year. Vote.
Vote.
I guarantee you drop your Dropbox. 100%. I guarantee you pass a Dropbox on your way to work or on your way to the store or something to drop your ballot off in the mail. If you don't trust it going through your mailbox, go to the ballot Dropbox. I guarantee you pass one on your way to something. Nearly every day there's a location. Or you can Google Dropbox locations near you. But anyways, I digress. Back to...
That's okay.
Back to that.
I left to teach. So when my decision to leave... so I was at a breaking point anyway. The administration was just not supportive. I will say, and till I'm blue in the face, the people that I worked with and the kids that I worked with, I love them so dearly and I would do anything for them, but it was just, I was not being supported. And after that accident, I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to a job every day that it makes me cry and is just completely ruining my mental health. My family is what's most important. And I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I left. I broke my contract, which is a big no-no. But I broke my contract. I left, came home, took care, made sure that my husband was taken care of, made sure that my oldest was taken care of. We all I was in therapy. We all got into therapy. And once my husband was in a better place, we had before he got in the accident, we had decided that we wanted to have another. I had decided that I wanted to have another baby after being adamant that I was one and done. Like I was never going to have another kid. That's another story in and of itself, which I won't 100%. Go down that rabbit hole because that'll take us forever.
That's okay though. I like those stories. But quick question: how old was your oldest at the time of the accident and through your career here on this timeline here? Because I understand your oldest was born in 2015, correct?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And my youngest was born in 2022.
2022, so a 7-year age gap. That's a big gap.
Yes, that's a big gap.
All things considered, it makes sense.
Yes.
Context, I mean, it doesn't matter. Everyone's age gap and preference for when they have kids is up to them. But, all things considered here, it makes perfect sense. So how old was your oldest? And, like, kind of where were you at with her?
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yes. Yep. I have 2 girls. I mean, yes, they're 2 girls until they tell me different. That's what we always joke about. Like,
makes sense. I have 2 girls as well. So.
Yeah. So my oldest, when her dad was in the accident, she was 4. Yep. She was just about to graduate preschool. Her dad was actually in the hospital for her preschool graduation, and it was big on her. It was a big deal. She didn't quite understand, like, she was 4, so to her, she knew daddy was in the hospital, and she used to say, like, daddy's broken, my daddy's broken, because that was all she could sort of understand. And we kept, like, she would FaceTime him. She is, I have to, like, stop and say this, and she can probably hear me because she's downstairs right now, but my oldest, I don't know what planet she comes from, but she is the most empathetic, the kindest, like, she is a healer through and through. And so while she didn't understand exactly what was going on, she had this way of just making everybody in this situation feel like it was going to be okay. Like, so my husband is obviously, he's in the hospital. He was in the hospital for quite a long time. He was on a lot of heavy medication. So he was either sedated or like not lucid a lot of the time. And he would have these horrible, horrible nightmares. And it was COVID times, so I could not stay with him overnight. I would be there literally from the minute they would let me in the hospital until the very last second. So like 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., I would be there the whole time. But the nights were really hard because he was alone. And one of the days she gave me one of her stuffed dogs. She's obsessed with dogs. She gave me one of her stuffed dogs and she said, give this to daddy and tell daddy that if he holds it, he'll be okay. And that got him through those nights. When I would leave, I would put the stuffed dog on his chest, and he, like, the very next morning, he told me, he's like, I held on to the dog and I knew what was real and I knew I was safe. And like, that's my oldest in a nutshell. She just knows how to help. But with that, as a mental health professional, you'll know that is a burden that no 4-year-old should need to bear. I was very adamant that she understand that she's a child and that she can be a child and she can feel her feelings and she doesn't have to fix me. She doesn't have to fix daddy. So I immediately got her into therapy, and she's been in therapy ever since. My husband also started therapy shortly before the accident and has continued. So we're a therapy family. We're really we advocate for therapy. And yeah, now with her, we're just working on, she is also diagnosed with anxiety. I have an anxiety disorder and OCD, and I've had it my whole life, but she has anxiety. So we're working on coping skills, working on all of those things. And yeah, she's amazing. She has always wanted a sibling, but I had never wanted more kids. And after the accident, like I said, my priorities changed. And I was like, life is short. I had postpartum depression with my oldest. And I said, I really want another go at this. I want to try this again. I want to see if I can have a different experience. I was very wrong, which we'll get into. But I felt very empowered. And so when we told her, she was either 5 or 6. She was probably 6 at the time. And we told her that we were pregnant, and she was over the moon. I'll say the funniest part of that whole journey is once my husband was released from the hospital and he had one of his first like primary care checks, he's broken he has a spinal fusion. He broke both of his legs, both of his wrists. So like he can't walk. Like, and one of the first questions he asks his doctor is, so when can we start trying to have a baby? And I was like, why don't we work on walking first? Like, let's work on walking.
And that every dad that is listening to this right now can truly be like, yeah, same. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So it took a while. When we got past the point of me having to like bathe him and clothe him and everything, I was like, okay, now maybe we can start trying. Just to like ease everyone's mind. Like he's always going to be in chronic pain. He's always going to have limitations, but he is a walking miracle. He goes to work every day. He can walk. He can take the kids outside. Like it's an actual miracle. Yeah, it's insane, and I'm thankful every day. But yeah, so we decided to try, and it did not take long at all, and I was pregnant again, and my oldest was over the moon. And yeah, the pregnancy was very, very different. I was a lot older. My second has second child syndrome, and she has from the moment she was conceived. She's been giving me heck the whole time. But she is the feistiest, fieriest, like we call her a hobbit. She's giant, but she's got the bushiest curly brown hair and like the pudgiest little cheeks, and our family would not have been complete without her. That is 100% certain. But the journey from having her was my personal hell, and never in my wildest dreams did I realize that mental health, even though I've always had mental health struggles, but mental health and specifically postpartum mental health could put you through so much physical and mental hell as it did. So it's been a long journey and I'm still on it.
That's such a cool story.
Yeah,
That's
I don't want to get too deep into it until
no, you're
I don't want to
good.
just
There's all
talk
the
and talk and
things.
talk.
No, I love that. There's so many directions there. It's so cool because there's just so much there in such a short span of time.
It's 3 years. It
And
was 3 years.
yeah, and that's such a short amount of time, and I can only imagine, just how much. I guess I'll ask, how did your yours and your husband's relationship like transform during those like the last like 3 years or so?
Oh my
Between
gosh.
because there was not only was there a traumatic accident, and then COVID, and then the healing and the recovery process, and then all the thoughts that this would never happen, but this is happening, all the ups and downs and the ins and outs, and all arounds and all the things. And I'm sure there was more time spent in hospitals and at home for a long stretch of
Yeah.
time and for your daughter. So this like how has your guys' like relationship overall changed from where you guys were to where you
Yeah.
are now? Like I'm sure it's so much different than from where it was before to where it is now.
Yeah, so my husband and I have been together for 16 years. We're college sweethearts, and the last 3 years has seen the biggest evolution, and not just one, like several evolutions, out of our entire relationship. We have always been incredibly communicative. Like we pride ourselves on that. Are you okay? Wrong hole. Okay,
I just can't
sorry.
drink water. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just worry about you. That's my nature. I worry about everybody.
Oh, we're good. Good.
Okay.
No more water
So
drinking for
yeah,
me.
we we have always had really, really strong communication, which has been a huge benefit to our relationship. We never had trust issues. We never had anything like that. We have always said we believe in soulmates. We believe that we're from like the same soul family. He just has always been my person. Before trying to think like before the accident and after the accident, and before I got pregnant with my youngest, was probably the strongest and most solid we've ever been in our relationship. We were both in such a good place. Like I had my priorities in order. He had just gone through this traumatic experience. So he was reevaluating his priorities, and we were just really strong and really happy with each other. Obviously I'd taken over a caregiver role for him for a little while, and that shifted our dynamic. He had always been more of a caregiver to me because of my mental health conditions. But I'd never felt more stable. He had never felt like he was like on a good path. Like we were in a really, really good place. And yeah, obviously the accident changed our dynamic, but it changed it in a really, really positive and progressive way. COVID actually brought our family a lot closer together. We were spending a lot more time together. And we had just bought a new house on 10 acres of land. So like we were getting outside a lot. We still live here. But yeah, things were really, really good. And then through the pregnancy, things were still pretty good. I was pretty grumpy this time. So I was a little harder to deal with, but he was very, very kind and gentle and very supportive. He's always been supportive. And then our dynamic shifted again. I guess I'll get a little bit into it because this really does affect how our relationship changed. But when my youngest was born, I had a planned C-section, but I had some birth trauma as a result. I developed a spinal headache, which I'd never heard of, and it sounds really benign. It's one of the most painful. It's a reaction to the spinal that they give you.
Mm-hmm.
You literally can't sit up. You can't move. Like your whole head feels like it's going to explode and you're going to throw up.
Whoa.
And it's awful. Nobody from anesthesia could come help me for over 24 hours. So like I had just had a C-section. My daughter was in the NICU for a little while and I can't move. Like it was horrendous. It was horrible. And fast forwarding, I was still sick when they sent me home. I was still incredibly sick and no one could figure out why, but I just wanted to go home. And a few days after getting home, I hemorrhaged. So I was bleeding out on my bathroom floor, which was my oldest. She was 7 at the time. She was watching me. She's sitting in the doorway watching me bleed. My husband's on the phone with 911. My newborn I don't even know where she was because she was somewhere in the house, obviously. But so again, rushed back to the hospital, had another surgery just a few days after having a C-section, blood transfusions, came home, and very, very quickly after that developed extreme postpartum mental health disorders. My ultimate slew of diagnoses, I have a lot of letters, were postpartum PTSD, postpartum OCD, postpartum depression, and postpartum anxiety. To make a very long story short, I essentially missed the first 6 months of my daughter's life because I was so ill or hospitalized for suicidal ideation. I was hospitalized 3 times, once in a completely different state. For listeners who don't know, there are only 2 inpatient facilities in the entire country that specialize in inpatient postpartum mental health disorders. And one is in North Carolina and one is in California. I'm in Vermont, so I went to North Carolina. But I was hospitalized 3 times. Came home, still was not well from the last hospitalization. I missed all the holidays. I was hospitalized for all the holidays. And I still was not well after my 3rd hospitalization. Outpatient therapy saved my life. I finally was listened to. Finally was my medication was managed. I've been on a crazy journey, but condensing all of that and how that affected my relationship with my partner was the primary caretaker of a newborn and a 7 to 8 year old. He's still obviously he's in pain every day. So he's limited. We had amazing support from his parents and my parents, but he went from having me be in like the best mental health like position that I'd ever been in to being completely broken and gone. I was gone. And even if I was here, I was so physically ill. My mental illness made me so I couldn't eat for weeks. I survived on Ensure. I was like violently nauseous, dizzy. The physical symptoms I can't even tell you. Like I never knew how sick it could make you. And I was worried about everything. I was worried that my youngest had a seizure disorder. I was worried that I had a blood clot and I was going to die. I was worried that I was going to fall down the stairs with her. I like a constant fear and I was scared that I was never going to feel well again, ever. I was convinced that this was the rest of my life, and if this is what the rest of my life was going to look like, it was not worth living. So he literally had to see me not want to be alive. And that was incredibly hard on him. And it was really hard on our kids. I mean, my youngest won't remember it, but I do. I remember it. And my oldest most certainly remembers it when she talks about when her sister was born, she doesn't talk about like, oh yeah, when Sissy came home, or oh yeah, when Sissy, she goes, when you were in the hospital the first time, or when you were in the hospital the second time, or when you were in the hospital the third time. Like that's how she marks that time. And it has affected both my husband and I are now in healing processes that don't necessarily align very well. We both have triggers that kind of trigger each other. So we're in a really complicated spot right now. And it's not bad. Like we talk about this in therapy. Neither of us have any want, need, desire to not be together. We both love each other very much, more than we ever have. But we are both in a recovery process at the same time. And that doesn't typically lead to a super like romantic or intimate type of relationship. We spend a lot of time needing to fill our own cups and needing to regain our own spoons, Google spoon theory. And it doesn't leave a lot of time for us as a couple. And that's something we're working really, really hard on right now. We're actually going to start, we have our own therapy, but we're going to start joint therapy as well so that we can process this together. But that was a very long way to sort of like
good.
bring you to the present and be completely transparent that like we tell each other all the time, like, this sucks. Like I'm you're upset all the time. I'm triggered all the time. I'm having flashbacks. You're having like his anxiety manifests as anger. So like it's not a fun place to be in, but we're both 100% committed to moving forward and getting through this together.
100%. No, that's such a cool story. Like cool in the aspect like it's unique, it's raw, it's authentic, it's not pretty, it's not
No.
beautiful. There's no happy ending yet. Yet.
No.
And it makes a lot of sense, like for him, that his anxiety manifests as anger, and you get triggered by everything. There's a lot of triggers for you, because you guys both have a ton of unmet needs for each other. There's so many like unmet needs, so many unfulfilled parts, of your relationship that you guys both are longing for. Like parts you are like longing for, like your heart, your souls, your bodies are longing for that, to have that back, to have it again, to get back to that place. And because ultimately what you guys want to work towards, I imagine, hence the couples therapy, to get there, to figure out how do we go from fight or flighting each other all day every day, because fight or flight's exhausting to be in. It's so exhausting to be in. Like I forced myself into fight or flight. I like the cold plunge. Like I cold plunged for 5 minutes at the gym the other day. It felt fantastic. But it's like my mind like is like racing during that time. So and it makes sense that you guys both have to spend a lot of time just like filling your own cups, because you guys are both just constantly trying to, fight off that fight or flight response that you guys are not even constantly in, that you live in, that you wake up in, that you go to
it's
sleep
nonstop.
in. It's all day, every day, and that is so mentally, physically draining. And it's not talked about nearly enough how physically ailing a mental illness can be, especially when it's, not treated properly, especially when it's not, the person not being heard, when they're not being believed, when they're not being validated, when they're not actually being helped, where their med manager is only treating a diagnosis but not the symptoms. And that's so important for everyone to know, like just listening to this in general. Like if you are on medication and you feel like they're not helping, say something. Ask for a reevaluation. Ask your doctor, so what is this medication treating? If they just say, oh, it's treating depression, okay, I understand that, but what is it treating? And if they just tell you depression, then you're taking the standard medication that thousands of other people are taking, that it's not helping. You need to ask, okay, but
I can't even tell you how many times I have 2-gallon-sized Ziploc bags of medications that I need to dispose of because of how many times every time I saw a different doctor, they prescribed something different.
mhm.
And my meds were changed so quickly and so frequently that it was, and I am not anti-medication. I'm very much for that it is a tool and it helps you access other tools. I'm still
Oh,
on
same.
medication, but the detriment to my mind and my body that over the course of these last couple of years, first of all, like if you had met me before this, I have gained I've gained over 100 pounds because of this. I've never looked like this in my life, and it's not about what I look like, it's about what I feel like. I can't move in the same ways because of this. I'm having health problems because of this. I just had my gallbladder removed. Like, I'm having all of these issues because my meds were changed so frequently.
Mm.
So it's very important to advocate for yourself, and medication is not a bad thing. You just need to be on the right ones.
100%. And you need to understand your
Yeah.
medications too. You need to understand what medications are
Yes.
for. Medications, at least from my perspective, how I see it, and it's a bit different than how a lot of professionals in the industry do also see it, is where they should be a they should be you should try to make them as a preventative measure as much as possible. Try to catch it early enough to where it's not like an extreme need where you're trying to prevent, where they're part of the preventative maintenance, preventative measures. Preventative medicine isn't used enough and it's not used hardly ever. Like preventative
Yeah.
medicine is an absolute must. I talk about that a lot on the podcast. I have a few doctors coming on. I've had a few doctors come on. We talk in length about preventative medicine. It's deeply important. But on top of that, like understanding like medication and understanding like psychology-based medication and prescription is that they're not meant to fix you. They're not meant to fix
No.
you. They're meant to provide your body and your mind a chemical. It's this little chemical package pretty much that you're putting in your body, and it's to help you have those chemicals that you don't have to allow you a second to take a breath so that you can be able to
Yes.
breathe for a minute. So then from in that minute, you can actually go to therapy or do the things that you need to do to work through that so that you can
Mhm.
I can function like a normal person for a little bit and work through this. Like I was on medication. I started
Yes.
medication back in probably we were still in there 2019-ish, and I was on it for probably 2.5, 3 years. Like I didn't take it forever. It was my
Yeah.
goal to get off of it. I have
Mhm.
my biological mother, and I believe it's on my dad's side too. And I'm pretty sure it's diagnosed, but I don't want to call anyone on my dad's side out, especially not my grandma Karen. Would hate to do that. Um, but I'm pretty sure there's a mood disorder. There's bipolar on my biological mother's side. I'm 99% sure if I ran her through a DSM-5 screening for mood disorder, she would score the highest you could possibly. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it's there with my dad as well. I'm not gonna blast my dad. I love my dad so much, but it's there on that side of the family too. And so and what people don't understand about bipolar is that it's a spectrum disorder. Um,
Mhm.
there's different kinds of mood disorders that fall within to the bipolar spectrum. That's very misunderstood. Because you hear bipolar, you think someone's just going to be happy one minute and lash out the next second. Absolutely not
Right.
true. For some cases, it is true. Some people do have the extreme mood swings. That's a symptom. It's a symptom. Um,
Mhm.
and for me, I had a very mild case of bipolar. I say had because I'm not actively like in treatment for it anymore, and I've worked through most of it. If I say I still have it, but I also had it at the same time. I had it worse than I have it
Mhm.
now. And so I was on a mood stabilizer medication. I just on one medication, one little mood stabilizer. It was one little capsule, and that was it. It helped me balance my mood, regulate emotions and everything, and help my body reproduce a chemical that I needed to function. it built up that chemical. I took it long enough. I took it regularly enough to, function, to build up that chemical, to rebuild that part of my brain essentially through work. Of course, I still had to work at it. Like I had to take it and be aware. Like, okay, I'm getting mood. I'm feeling it. When was the last time I took it? Because that's probably why I can't manage right now as well. But it wasn't as like a relied on thing. Like if I didn't take it, I had to manage. I had to figure out ways to manage. So I couldn't rely on it, life or death, because like I have to figure out how to work with this part of me. Now that I understand it, I have to work on understanding my mood and how it affects me, how different things affect me and whatnot. So I had to put in the work, which is why talk therapy is so important on top of, proper med management, so that you can learn how to work through it and work through these coping skills and learn how to cope and how to adjust and how to work through these different things that come your way, because that's so important in general to be able to do that. So I'm huge on that as well. Make sure you have proper med management. Make sure you understand, like make sure you ask and you advocate for yourself, for your doctor to be treating your symptoms. Because you have to treat your symptoms of you can have anxiety all day, but how Chelsea has anxiety and how I have anxiety, that's going to look completely different. We're going to need two different sets of medication. But if the doctor prescribes us both the same one just because we have anxiety, she has postpartum anxiety. I have generalized anxiety, or maybe I have separation anxiety, or maybe I have social anxiety.
You could have OCD. You could have
OCD.
social, right? Like
I could have there's so many different kinds that I could have versus I'm not gonna have. Well, I could have postpartum anxiety. Men can have it too. Yep. Men can have postpartum anxiety, depression, the same kind of thoughts, the desires, the ideations, everything like that. It's not an uncommon place whatsoever for men to have it as well. Just to play devil's advocate is there.
10.
So, yeah.
Yep.
And so it's important to know that as well. So it's so important to advocate for yourself, know yourself, say, hey, this medication is not working, and ask those questions, because if you don't ask, they're not going to tell you. That's, not their job to tell you. They just expect you to say okay and move on, because they don't want to spend more than 6 minutes with you, essentially, if they don't have to.
If that, especially when you're hospitalized, it's not. Yeah, no. They're just. I had, when I was in outpatient therapy, they basically explained inpatient therapy as like a jail where they just make sure that you're not going to end your life.
Pretty much,
and that kind of pretty much sums it up. The only good experience that I had, and when I say good experience, I still came out of it and was hospitalized again, but the only place that I didn't feel like I was like in danger, or like I felt like I was kind of being listened to, was when I was in North Carolina, and that was a specific perinatal unit, but I still came back sick and ended up hospitalized again. So exactly what Jay's saying, advocate for yourself. And I was lucky that I had a support system that was advocating for me, because I wasn't doing the best job advocating for myself because I was so ill. So my therapist was advocating for me, my partner was advocating for me. My support system is what got me through this. So
100%.
Yeah.
No, that's huge in itself. Make sure you have a support system. Make sure you understand what that support system even looks like for yourself. Make sure that you understand how important that is. Make sure you understand that, a support system can look like a bunch of different things. It looks like, oh gosh, it
can be anything.
It can be anything. But it's so important to make sure that you have it. Make sure you build it. Make sure you find it. And your support system could literally be one person. If it's one person, great. That's better than 0 people. But I like what you said way earlier, how it wasn't your kid's job to be that, to be that for you. Because it's not our kid's job to heal us, to fix us, to work with stuff. Our kids love us. I think that's so cool how much of that empathy and how caring she is shows through, because that's definitely something that some of that's natural, but some of that's also going to be everything she's learned and seen from you and your husband as well.
I mean, we laugh about because we're like there's no way we can take 100% credit for this because like she was just like she came out that way. Like she's always been this way. So I don't know. I don't want to take 100% of the credit for that, but
Definitely.
she is through and through. She loves big. She loves big.
That's awesome. And you know, it's so important to just find the right support system, partners, family, having that. And I think it's so important if you do need that support, you have to be willing to be slightly open about it. You have to be willing to be slightly open because people can't support you if they don't have any context to what's going on, because then they don't know. They're just trying to help you, and then they're not helping you the way that you need to be helped. Maybe you need help with childcare. Maybe you need help cooking or cleaning. Maybe you need help with someone taking you out of the house to get a distraction. Maybe you need someone to give you a conversation. Maybe you need someone just to sit in the same room with you, but also spaced apart so that you can understand that. Like, people don't know how to help you unless you tell them how to help you. No one can read minds. No one's a mind reader. If someone tries to sell you that they're a mind reader, they're lying to you. I'm sorry. All the mind readers out there just ended your careers. But yeah, no one's a mind reader. You have to tell people how you want them to help you, especially your main support network, because they can't help you if they don't know how to help you. If they don't know a little bit about what's going on. They don't need to know the deep, intimate details and everything. But if you're struggling with mental health and you tell someone, hey, I need help, okay. And what do you need from me? Like, what are you need? Oh, you're struggling with your mental health. Okay, that gives me an idea of things I can do for you. Do you need me to go to the store for you? Or like, a girl with mental health, I can't really leave the house. Okay, cool. That triggers for me in my brain. Okay, do you need me to come and grab your card or grab some money from you so I can go to the store for you and grab a list so I know what to get you? Kind of thing, or do you want to send me a list? I'll go to the store. You can just Venmo me something, Venmo me back for it, kind of thing. Would that help? Or do you need me to make you a meal because you feel like you can't cook and get up out of bed? Cool. I'll come over. You go through your fridge. I'll figure out a meal for you to make a meal for you guys, kind of thing. Or whatever that looks like. Oh, you take it out of bed. Okay, your house is probably trash because you got 2 kids. Let me come and help, and help get clean and tidy. Or you're struggling with the kids and you need to get them from point A to B to C. You are struggling, your husband's working. Okay, cool. Call the school, put me on the list. Let me go and pick up the kid. Let me run him from point A to point B, kind of thing. No problem. Just make sure I don't get arrested when I show up to the school. Kind of thing. But no, there's so many different ways that you can help someone when they're struggling with their mental health. They could just need to get out of the house. Hey, let me come pick you up. We'll go get coffee, or we'll go get your favorite thing, or
we'll just drive.
Or we'll just drive. You just need to get out of the house and walk around. Cool, let's go to Target. Or let's go walk around. Let's go do this. This would be something kind of thing. Let's figure out what the thing is you need. Do you need to talk? Do you need some space? Or do you need a distraction? Do you need to do an activity? Do you need help? Like, what does that support look like to you? And you can't get that support unless you tell people what you need and how you need it. So very big. Again, really comes back to advocating for yourself and letting people know, like, muster up as much as you can to get it out. And, precursors, like, this is all I got. This is all I can tell you. This is all I have the ability to communicate. So please just take it and run with it, kind of thing. So,
well, that's kind of what Quiet Connection is. So my Quiet Connection is obviously a podcast, but it's also a support group, and my goal is to get people talking about it and feeling comfortable sharing their stories so that they can build those support networks, so that they don't feel ashamed, so that they don't feel scared of their own thoughts. And I assume like that's part of your mission too in talking about mental health, like the whole like be prepared, not scared. You can still be scared, but know that it's okay to be scared, and know that it's okay to tell someone that you're scared, and it's okay to say like, oh yeah, I definitely had thoughts of tripping down the stairs with my baby in my arms, or I definitely had these, like, it doesn't matter what it is. It's okay to talk about it, and you need that community so that you can see yourself through it. So, I mean, that's our whole goal. Our whole goal is creating that community and making it normal to talk about the things that we're told we're not supposed to talk about. Don't talk about those things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no, yeah, talk about it, because I can guarantee you, look to your left and look to your right. Someone else has felt the way that you feel right now.
100%. And I think that even answers a question I was thinking about asking you there to wrap us up is, what's the one piece, the one thing that you would leave for the mom also going through it? But it sounds like that's kind of the one, thing is to talk about it, is to find your support group, find your people, communicate your needs and advocate for yourself, and to talk about it. It's okay to talk about. We can talk about Bruno.
Yeah.
It's fine. They talk about Bruno throughout
We
the
can
whole freaking
absolutely
movie.
talk about Bruno.
We talk about Bruno through the whole freaking movie.
Can we talk about how the cousin knew that he was there the whole time and she didn't say anything?
No, she
Girl,
didn't.
you knew Bruno was there.
Yeah, everyone knew.
My tagline is, "You are not alone. I see you." And that, I think, is the biggest umbrella statement of like my whole mission. You're not alone. It's okay to talk about it. I see you. I may not be going through exactly what you're going through, but I see you and I hear you, and we can build a community together. If I'm going to be that community for you, I don't care where you are in the world. I will be that community for you. I don't care, but you need the community. So yeah, that's and Bruno can talk about his feelings too.
Love it, 100%. Well, two things here before we end. I just want to give a shout out and a challenge to all the listeners post this episode to go and down to the description of the episode, no matter what platform you're on. It's everywhere you're listening. Go down and click the link to subscribe to the twice a week newsletter that comes out for the podcast, promoting the different episodes. On weekends, it comes out to let you know about the latest and greatest episode. Sometimes it's even streaming early, depending on the platform, depending on how I'm feeling. It comes out early. You can learn about early access to the podcast, get podcast updates, tips and tricks, dad advice, dad hacks, and mental health tips and tricks, and so much more, all within between those two newsletters every week. So newsletter, please drop down, subscribe. It's a great resource. It's so much fun to create those for you guys. Second thing here is just a shout out to our episode sponsor of the podcast. Drive positive behavior change with June. Is your child struggling with behavior, habits, or routines while at school or at home? Well, June might be worth a look. This new revolutionary app combines a video game that kids love with important tasks and habits that you want them to practice daily. Give the app a try for free and use my code YNGDAD to earn 25% off your annual subscription, and see why over 500,000 families and over 1,000 therapists are recommending June. That's JOON. And visit JOONapp.io/YOUNGDAD to learn more. Again, you can find that little blurb, the link, and my code down in the description of the episode as well. And lastly, for all the deals, all the specials, and all the promos and partners of the Young Dad Podcast are also down below in the show notes. You can just simply click our link tree and it'll take you to the email subscription, June, and every other partner that we have of the podcast currently running. So make sure to go down there and check it out. And make sure you like, follow, subscribe, leave a review, and do all the things on all the social media platforms that you hear 100 times over on every other podcast. And lastly, Chelsea, tell us where the listeners can find more of you, more of your podcast, and where they can keep up and follow you and learn more about this amazing community that you're creating.
You can find me pretty much anywhere. I am on Quiet Connection is on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, YouTube, anywhere you get podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that. I have a website, quietconnectionpodcast.com. And yeah, I run all of those. If you are looking for me and you message through any of those platforms, you're going to get me. You're going to talk to me. So thank you, Jay, for having me on and for letting me share my story. And yeah, I'm excited to keep listening.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's much appreciated. And we'll see if the audience is still awake and with us.